Welcome, everyone. So happy to see you guys here for part 2 of Overcoming Issues with Perception, our Sacred Self-Healing member workshop, and the 9th workshop this year. So if you don't know how to find the recordings, you can go into the forum for the Sacred Self-Healing members, or look on the right side of the invitation emails, where all these videos that are, or all the recordings that are building on one another, are listed. So we are currently here in this building a bridge between spiritual and material world in 2024. We are uncovering the issues of perception in our daily lives. And we had some very cool realizations in a parallel workshop series for Sacred Self-Healing members, which is a little bit more advanced. We're talking about the esoteric concepts of electrification and etherization. Those are words that are probably not familiar to you, but if you want to engage into the deeper levels of occult knowledge and, so the cosmic picture of, these issues such as perception, such as awakening issues, such as issues with fear, doubt, apathy, issues with money and material security and relationships, then maybe give yourself this time, so that those workshops are usually like 2.5 hours long. This one here today will take about 2 hours, an hour and a half to 2 hours. So the goal of this 3-part workshop series is to discuss the issues with you, the issues of perception and discernment of truth. Probably the most important discussion that we can have at this day and age. Yeah? Perception and discernment of truth / reality. Why do I think it's the most important part? For 2 reasons. Why do I think it's the most important topic for us to discuss? For 2 reasons. Number 1, truth is under attack and never has been, to the degree that we're experiencing this nowadays. This has to be aware to us due to mass media and social media. Untruth has a way to get to us, directly to us on our phones, on our smart devices, that it never before had. So we are not just able to access all the cool information that the internet can provide us with, but also are under the subjection of it, which means that it actually reaches us and it bombards us. So this is something that calls us to become better at discerning what is true and what is not. The other reason, and this has to do with what we've discussed in part 1, is that there is an issue with our perception that has always been there for as long as humans exist, but that there's also a built-in solution, our consciousness. And this is something that you can only see if you look at human development from the perspective of spiritual evolution. What is it that we're supposed to learn? Why is it that we are experiencing so many schisms, so many struggles, and so much toxicity in our life? Now, if I think back, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 8,000 years, life circumstances were completely different than they are today. And therefore, the way we thought about, God and the world and ourselves was, not very conscious. It was mostly preconceived and very externalized. But nowadays we have this impulse in us, and that's something that we've worked out together last time, this impulse to seek truth. So why do you think that is? And why are we so eager to find truth nowadays? What's different today than 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 8,000 years ago? Anybody any idea? Why is that different all of a sudden?
That we're inundated with information.
Yeah, most people couldn't even read and write until like 100 years ago. That's one of it. I mean, information was there, but it wasn't decipherable. It was very exoteric. It was only, very esoteric. It was only accessible for a small minority, mostly determined by, your physical wealth and maybe heritage, like where you're from. And that was only like a handful of people in each of the societies, that actually had full access to information. So we do have access to information now, and we can all read. Okay, so this is cool. But what is it really that is coming through in us that we are not just buying into everything, that we are questioning things, that we are, having, these notions in us that something isn't adding up or something isn't, I guess, the way it's supposed to be? I don't know, like this questioning in us, these cognitive dissonances that we have, that I described last time as the most excruciating pain psychically that we can experience. A cognitive dissonance, a contradiction within ourselves, a very, very conscious contradiction, a schism. Yeah, we feel one way, but we act another way. We think one way, but we say a different thing. That's a schism. Yeah, and in spirituality, we call this duality. Yes, it's basically the curse. There's a lot of good things that can be said about being human. Yeah, and you know me, I'm the first one, to make people aware of this. But there's one thing that we all struggle with, and that is our own duality, that we can feel both our spiritual self, our higher self, if you will, the idealized self, and our lower self, the part in us that seems to, take off on its own, that we don't seem to have control over. We call this ego a lot. Okay, and last time we investigated those different states and also how they feel and how it is indeed impossible to discern truth when we are in any of these lower states. And we defined them, and you can look this up in various of our workshops, but also just go to Dr. David Hawkins and look up the calibrated levels of consciousness. And it's very well researched. So we know that. We know that when we are in a lower state, energetically, emotionally, that the way we perceive ourselves and the way we perceive the world changes along with it. Yeah. And as energy workers, yeah, and aspiring self-healers, we take this a step farther and come to the conclusion that there's a link between our energetic state and our perception. And that is probably the most effective way to approach this, because we can observe our energetic states via our consciousness, and they just are. They just are. There's no attempt to explain that. That is what psychology tries to do. But when we take it a step farther, We're not getting distracted with why we're there. That is something that we can train later. We are concerning ourselves more with the effects of it, and the effects can be felt by each and every one of us, regardless of how much knowledge we have or how much we've studied psychology. So it's irrelevant, okay? Because this schism that we perceive, this duality in us, yeah, the split, wanting one thing but then doing another thing, or aspiring to become this or that, and then choosing something else. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. That is something that we all experience, and this, the reason why I called it curse earlier is because we are experiencing this schism. We are experiencing our duality consciously. Now, while this at first, and I don't know about you, but there were many moments in my life where I wished I could go back to just being unconscious and not knowing any of these things. Yeah. Like, just don't even bother. Like, truth, who cares about truth? Let's just be politically correct, or let's just do what the neighbors say, or what my daddy tells me to do, and I'm out of trouble. Well, that is not the case. All right. So the degree and the numbers, the stats nowadays of people with mental instabilities and mental illnesses has never been so high. And the reason for that, apart from the individual reasons, is the duality that we're experiencing more and more conscious. Now, those of you who are here right now, raise your hand. Do you understand? Do you know? Can you feel what I mean with feeling your own duality? Do you know what I mean with this? Yeah, raise your hand. There's a little emoticon there. Yes, the most excruciating pain, yeah, of finding yourself in a situation or in a relationship or in a job or simply in a life, okay, that does not feel true to you, that does not feel like you've chosen it. And this is something that we need to understand here as preconception for investigating and discussing levels of reality and perception, namely that for as long as we are experiencing our own duality, we can also call this ego, because ego is the part in us that is basically the manager of all of this, okay? The manager of duality, the manager of dealing with stuff, okay? So for as long as we are dominated, for as long as our ego is the manager of reality, okay, we will experience struggle and pain, not just psychically. When I say psychically, I mean our emotions, our thoughts, and also our bodies. And we talked about this last time, how most of the, especially the lower emotional states, or the lower the states, the more physical they get, need to be experienced. It's a physical program that runs, but the way we feel about it and the way we think about it, that's something like more like a gray area. That's something where we have a bit more choice, and that's something I would like to address with you today, namely the role that our mind plays in perception. Yeah, after we discussed your personal problems with perception, yeah, what influences your perception the most? Yeah. So I'm going to ask you here in a few moments. You can already think about this. Yeah. Last time I said, until our minds are properly trained, and until we use our spiritual senses and organs properly, yeah, we cannot discern truth. And not being able to discern truth means that we working with only a certain percentage of our perception. We're working with filtered perception. We're not seeing the whole picture. We're not seeing the full range of what we could see. And again, when I say see, I don't mean visually, I mean, understand reality. We're only seeing a very limited, a selective part of reality. And the part in us that selects or filters that is what we call the ego, yeah, the manager of duality. Now, the ideal is that there's another, a different part of us is in charge. Who would we rather want to be in charge of our perception? Who or what? We understand that the way we are using our senses of perception, our channels of perception today, only provides us with a small part of reality. Kind of like how we look at light out there, and we know this is science that we only see a very small part of the spectrum. Yeah, we don't see ultraviolet, we don't see infrared, and there's many more ranges of light that we cannot see. And yet we're okay with operating in the world. When it comes to our ability to discern truth, my question for you guys right now is, which part in you do you think is able to discern truth, if at all? Has anybody ever thought about that? We've already established that our ego is not able to discern truth. Our ego has a filter, it has an agenda, and our body has sort of here in 3D, a certain power over our perception in that it can, really influence the way we perceive ourselves. And if you're sick or something, if you're in physical pain, your ability to perceive the outside world and your environment really contracts. So we've already established that. Now, which part in you do you think or feel could do a better job than your ego?
I put into the chat true self.
All right, but that's just a word. So explain it, or describe it to us, Linda, so that we can better understand what you mean with the true self.
Sort of my heart of hearts, the drop in, the the ground, the connect, and the listen.
So are you referring to like a different you, or are you referring to a different state of you? Because what I heard you list as descriptors are more activities that you do in order to get there.
Yeah, to connect with being there. So so sort of disconnecting my emotion and my brain. I used to call it my what did I call it? My heart brain.
You use the word connect. Okay, that tells me that there is something there that, I mean, just very simple here. Something in you that you would like to be connected with more, and something that you just described, mind and emotion, you called it, that you want to connect with less. All right. So to me, that means that you're seeking to be or to have a different part of you in charge. And you call this the true self. And if you would now describe the true self versus the ego, say, what is different? when you are connected with your true self?
For me, it feels neutral, knowing, calm,
Okay.
and just an awareness that it's truth.
Okay. I guess neutral and calm are the best descriptors right now that we can use, right? Because we all know what neutral or to me, this is what calm feels like. Yeah. Um, as you guys know, I'm an energy coach for a living, and I can tell you that 95% of people don't actually know what neutral feels like. But calm, I guess, is something that we can use, especially in context with this excruciating pain, those cognitive dissonances, that duality that I described earlier, right? So calm would be the opposite of being in that schism, right? You don't feel an inner conflict. You just feel calm. Is that okay to say it that way? Calm would be like a physical and emotional descriptor. I feel calm. Neutral is more of a mental descriptor. Linda, since I have you here, but everybody can chime in. When you feel neutral, what is neutral? What does that mean?
For me, it's without thought and without emotion.
Okay. So without thought, I mean, it's not that you're unconscious, like as in like you fall over and are no longer awake. It's not like that, right? It's like you have maybe you have thoughts going on, but you don't experience contradiction. You don't have the thought that is sort of banging at your forehead, or you experience something like a relief. Is that fair to say? Would you describe neutral as a state in which your thoughts are not creating pain in you? They're just there.
Yeah, the relief for me is sort of feels like the calm word.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's an absence of something. Okay, would you mind saying that in your words? This is very cool. When I do this with individuals here with you, and when you allow me to do that, because this is already the training of your spiritual senses. Okay, you got to understand this. I'm guiding you here. I'm training you. Okay, the questions I ask and the rephrasing and the reiterating that I do trains you in a different way of thinking. Okay, Linda, when you're calm, what is there and what is not there?
What's not there is the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
What is there hmm, isn't.
Well, something is. I mean, you're still
Yeah,
alive and aware and all that, but
yeah, for sure.
this is very cool for me because this is literally how mostly everybody experience calm or neutral, and that is just simply through the absence of something. Yeah, the
Yeah,
absence
that's a
of
good point. It's the absence.
yeah, the absence of that excruciating pain that I'm talking about. All right, don't think of the pain of like stumping your toe or something. I'm talking about a psychic pain. I'm talking about the pain that is constantly going on inside of you in your heart. Okay, and when you're calm, you don't feel that. It's still, the contradictions or like whatever is still there, but it just does not pain you as much, right? I mean, reality hasn't changed.
Absolutely.
This is the most important thing that you guys need to become aware of. Reality doesn't change because your state changes. It's still the same, but the way you perceive it has changed. Okay, so here on this slide, and you're mostly familiar with this, you can see, sort of different descriptors. They are relating to the perception and the life view that is underlying the way of perceiving. So when you are in a neutral state, you actually become able to discern truth. But if you're not neutral, if you're not at least experiencing the absence of this inner contradiction, this excruciating pain, those cognitive dissonances, your duality, you are not able to discern truth. That is also a big takeaway from part one. We can't believe anything that our mind tells us, okay, or portrays to us as reality or truth for that matter, if we are not at least neutral about it. At least that's the minimum requirement, Linda. We might not be fully connected to our true self at that moment, but at least we're not dominated by our ego. Can you guys follow me? We
I
have to get
can, yeah.
yeah,
I
we have
was
to get out
feeling,
of this linear thinking. Linear
yeah,
thinking is it's either that or that. Okay, it's either all good or all bad. No, there's ranges here. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I can feel within me there's an observer part so that I can actually drop into the center, like Linda was saying, and just feel and become aware of a presence that's me, but it's quiet. And then being able to discern and observe the parts that aren't quiet, like there's a being aware that might be an emotion might come forward or a thought, and I can observe it and drop it, so the outside chatter moves further away, so that it feels like
It's not
an
necessarily
awareness.
just outside chatter. It's also the inside chatter. Like,
The inside chatter, yeah,
yeah,
the emotion that might. So if all of a sudden just becoming aware, becoming present, it's almost feeling like um, being in hyperspace, really. It's like I am present in this space, and there is a definite feeling of space around it. And that if something, a part of myself, many selves that make up this experience come forward, I can feel that peace, I can observe that peace, but I don't let it overtake me, if that makes,
yeah, this is extremely important what you just said. Because really what you're telling us, and this is basically the message of hope. Yeah. I don't know if you realize how powerful this is, what you just said, is that you have a choice. So you talked about the observer in you, okay? And the observer, I would like to call what you talked about the witnesser. So I discerned there a little more because the observer in us is often associated with our mind, with our intellect. Yeah. The witnesser in us is able to perceive the duality itself. Yeah. You called it outside chatter, but really what you were talking about is just the going ons in life. Okay. The going ons in life are always there, right? And they're on the outside, and you can't change that. And they're on the inside. We can't change the outside, but we can change the inside. Okay, we can change how we are witnessing this from the inside. We can say, oh yeah, that's really annoying. Oh yeah, I'm really in pain right now. Oh yeah, I'm very angry right now. And that is truth. We talked about this last time. That's truth. Okay. And therefore I know that however I see the world right now and myself in it is probably faulty. It's probably just a small part of the big picture. Who do you think can do such a conclusion? It's not your mind at that moment, because your mind is experiencing the anger or the pain. Oh, she said this, and that's why I should be upset, and this is, this and this and that, judgment and criticism, right? And that's why, or, oh my God, she said this, and this is making me scary, or making me scared, or the world is so bad, and everybody's out there to get me. Those are thoughts. That's the mind doing that, okay? But then there's a place, and you can say, oh, I'm really anxious right now. Whoa, look at my thoughts. They're all colored by my anxiousness. Oh, I'm really angry right now. Look at, the energy, look at the feel of my thought. Can you guys follow me? This is an extremely important distinction. There's a part in you, and Linda, I will 100% agree with you. We call this true self because we need to name it something. Julian, you called it a place in you. Okay, let's just, for the sake of training, personify it and call it the true self. That's my true self. And what characterizes my true self? My true self is the witnesser of myself. That is an entity that is experiencing me, myself, and my ego, and my physical body and my emotions. But at the same time, it is able to look at it in a detached way, not dissociated, just detached. You can say, oh yeah, well, my body is going through a lot of anxiety right now, or my emotions are going through a lot of pain right now, or anger, or whatever. That part in us, that we call true self, is ultimately our consciousness. We call consciousness here in this context something that is higher in hierarchy than our ego. And it is in us already. So, Linda, when you talked about how to connect with that part in you, with that other being in you, that is able to witness what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing in your body, what you're saying, and what you're doing. You are, in fact, talking about your higher self. That is the higher version of you, the self that is able to access your higher faculties. And as it does that, and you describe the state of being connected with that as calm and neutral. As it does that, it accesses different channels, different senses, different organs of perception. So how is that possible? Okay, Julian, you just delivered the message of hope, namely that once we are able to build a proper connection with this part in us, let's just call it higher self or true self, both are very similar, whereby the true self, more of an inside out feeling, is the higher self, is still a part of you, but it is the idealized form, the ideal, the potential, the full potential of who you are. Yeah? And sometimes I just call it spiritual self. Why? Because it is not the kind of self that we experience or that we witness, that we can witness when we are looking through the lens of our ego. When we are looking through the lens of our ego, which is tied to the material, to the physical 3D, we cannot feel this calm. We cannot feel neutrality. So here we have a pretty solid definition of the difference, between operating as your ego self. And we're going to get into this more now because we first had to make this big distinction, yeah, between those two parts in us that are ultimately the cause for this experienced duality in us. So we experience our lower version, yeah, that reacts robotically based on trauma, based on the past, based on karma, based on all these things, inner child, shadow, and so forth, belief system that we have accumulated in this physical lifetime. And then we have a part in us that seems to stand above that, that seems to be able to detach from that. And now I would like to ask you what you think or what you believe, how we can do that. We've already agreed that we have something like an ego self and that we have something like a higher self. And maybe some of you look at the true self as the mediator between the two, which is not too far-fetched. That's how I actually see it. But we have these two beings in us, the physical and the spiritual being. Spiritual being, just because we still define spiritual as everything in the unseen. It is something that we cannot really touch or hear or smell or taste or see. But it is there. We can connect with it according to you, yeah, who have already had many years of training. That is a place or a part of ourselves that we can connect with. And as we do, and now comes the question, as we do, our perception changes. Why do you think that is?
In that moment, we are connected, or I am connected to my spirit self. It's the presence. It's like a feeling of something within me. It's my spirit self, and all the other selves, and as you just said, all the different layers can be witnessed. But the deeper part of me that's doing the witnessing feels like spirit. It's like it's eternal. It's very hard to sort of describe, but it's the feeling of being so much more than what we see and think.
Yeah, has a larger range of perception, right? So much more. Okay, maybe not everybody agrees with you here, Julianne, with the descriptors that you're using, because not everybody has a solid feeling for spirit self, which is a little different from just me calling it spiritual self. Like that's a bit more defined. Yeah, and you're bringing in, sort of a higher, even higher hierarchy. You called it the part in you that connects with spirit. I wasn't even going there yet. I was just referring to actually parts in us. It's not really connected with anything but ourselves, just on different levels. But I liked how you said that, the spiritual self or the higher self perceives more, and it perceives, the like say the higher potential. Okay, it perceives, in that it perceives a larger picture of yourself. It fills you with a different feeling, a feeling of, I mean, now I'm supplementing here. Now I'm putting words in your mouth, but a feeling of connectedness with an even higher power. an even higher power than your higher self. Not everybody has a reference feeling for that yet, okay, but it's not incorrect. The question though is what or how is that possible? How, this is a part in us, okay, that is taking part, it's participating in this reality. It's a different part of us that is participating in reality. And it sees reality differently than our ego self does. How's that possible?
Are you just pointing towards the etheric self, like the energetic self? So we have our physical body that we feel, well, we can touch, and we're aware that we're here in our body, but an overlay of that is the energetic self. Is that what you're pointing towards?
I don't think anybody can connect with this really. Etheric self and astral self and all these kind of things. Those are all lingo words that they don't really help us to understand this. Okay, and not that it's wrong, but it's not really a good way of describing the mechanism of how perception works. Subjective.
Hi there. The way I kind of see it is it's like putting on a different pair of glasses and like filters are removed. I can see clear. Like if I'm in my ego self, I have blinders on, I have sunglasses on. And the more that I connect with that higher self and the higher consciousness, the clearer my glasses are becoming, and the picture is getting bigger. Is that helpful?
I think that's very accurate as far as like the subjective experience of that is concerned. We can
Yeah,
all
it's hard to
confirm that.
describe.
Yeah, but that's how it feels like, right? It's
Yeah,
not.
totally.
It's not like we're looking anywhere different. It's just that we're seeing more.
Yes,
We're
and
seeing more,
feeling more.
and it becomes clearer.
Yes.
So this is one of the things that one of the takeaways that I want you to write down, or just sort of drive that home with you, and that is truth is always clear. It's very clear, and it is without conflict. If there's any indication for you to measure your own level of truth, okay, then just measure the level of conflict that you have. The more conflicted you are about something, the more it indicates to you that you're not in truth. Let me repeat that. Truth is always clear. The higher your degree of confliction about something, the lesser your ability to see truth. Simple as that. So, what is it that we can do or need to do in order to discern truth better? Last time I said the most important thing is to become more aware of your own states. Why? Because we've already identified the connection between our own state and the quality or accuracy of our perception. So the lower our energetic state, well, the fuzzier, the more contracted, I like the word contracted, the more filtered our perception gets, the smaller the picture. And now we're getting to a place where we're saying, okay, well, wait a minute. It is possible to tap into like a more clear picture, different glasses, different pair of glasses, or no glasses, maybe. Yeah. It is possible. There's a certain part in us that is capable of doing that. We just don't know how. Who of you has a very solid understanding of how you can change your perception when you find yourself caught in your ego perception. Describe to us how you identified that you were in ego perception and how you can shift into your true self or higher self perception instead. How you can change your state in order to see a more clear picture.
I would feel conflicted and a bit feel energetic, like disturbed, and to disrupt it, like the awareness in the moment where I'm feeling something pushing against me or feeling within myself this conflict, I would stop. I can take a breath and just go, okay, wait a minute. That's my favorite saying, is wait a minute, and recognize within myself what emotion, where I'm at, what am I experiencing, and just create that space. So that sort of disrupts me, like the horse bolting from the gate. You know what I mean? It's like if I let myself go with it, if I don't stop and take that breath, then the horse is bolted and I'm probably going to get pulled right out, and it's going to take a while or a little moment to come back. But then just being able to observe it and coming back into my center, create a space, breathe and go, and just being aware that I've been caught or identified or made an opinion or a judgment on something, which then pulls me straight into my head and my ego and my thinkingness that goes, oh, I know what's going on, and I must do this or this to get out of it. So that straight away I know that I've been caught. So to break that, to disrupt that, is like to take a breath and just allow what is to be there, and get back into my own energy and feel my own center, and take a breath and breathe and come back into center so I can better observe what's happening.
I'm following you here, writing down what you guys come up with. All right, so how can we identify ego perception? We've already discussed this. You confirmed this just right now. There's a conflicted inner feeling. Anything else that you would say sort of describes to you or helps you identify when your perception is skewed, when it's filtered or contracted due to being in an ego state? You have a conflicted inner feeling. Anything else? Anybody?
When I'm stuck in an emotion
All
or
right.
I'm ruminating in my mind.
Okay. So stuck in an emotion or thought. Anybody physical sensations when you're in your ego perception?
Yeah, I was going to say your heart rate can go up. You can
Oh,
all of a
okay.
sudden feel, shaky, or you can start to feel heat rise. You can
Mm-hmm.
feel your stomach contract, or you can feel like you've been hit in the stomach, or
Yeah, that punch in the gut feeling.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the punch in the gut, like, I don't know if this was clear last time, but in part one, we cannot really prevent from our nervous system and this part in us that is truly bound to 3D from reacting to something. Yeah. So picture, looking at you know, a lion staring at you, ready to pounce. Okay? You cannot prevent your body from switching to, fight, flight, or freeze and feeling, the rush, the injection of adrenaline into your bloodstream. You cannot change that. That's going to happen. That's pre-programmed. That's part of your physical condition. And it's good so. All right? We should all be grateful that we have that. The problem is only when we are in a continual state of fight, flight, or freeze, then our senses don't quite work that well anymore. It's like the fire alarm that goes on when you put your toaster on. Do you guys know what I mean? Yeah? Then that means that there's something wrong in the calibration there. Okay? Because when you put your toaster on, which you choose to do, and your fire alarm goes on, there's sort of what psychologists call a maladaptive reaction to it. Yeah? Because turning on your toaster to have a piece of bread toasted is not a threatening thing. And yet your system goes through this. So don't underestimate this, and be aware that, being spiritual doesn't mean to not be physical anymore. Okay? You're still a body, and you'll still react to things that you see or hear or smell or touch. All right? That's part of it. But it's another thing to get stuck in there. Yeah? Or like the misaligned or miscalibrated fire alarm, to constantly, you called it ruminating earlier. That's a mental activity. We also have emotional activities where we go into emotional loops. Yeah, we just keep repeating the same emotional or the same emotion and thought pattern that is tied to that over and over again. It's robotic. That's why I called it robotic. It's almost like machine-like. Or those of you who are a little older remember, when you used to have LPs, your vinyls, when they got stuck in a place, and it would just keep playing it over and over, or the CDs when they got stuck. All right, this is something that we would describe, for sort of machine-like items or beings. As humans, that actually shouldn't really be there. So on one hand, it's good that we have an autonomous nervous system, that we have all these instincts and drives and, pre-programmed, behaviors that allow us, that support us in our physical survival. But somehow they can also work against us. Yeah, somehow it can happen that, these pre-programmed survival strategies, turn on us. And even more visible, it becomes to us when we look at our coping mechanisms that we formed, say as a child, that we formed in situations of trauma where our nervous system was overwhelmed, yeah, and where we could not handle truth with the tools given. Now, granted, if it was something that happened to us when we were 2 years old, what kind of tools do we have to deal with, let's say, a car accident or our parents getting divorced? We have none. Okay, and therefore our coping strategies aren't really sophisticated. There's nothing wrong with experiencing ourselves operating with sort of lower level coping mechanisms, but there's another thing when we get stuck in them. Yeah, and addictions are a very good example. Addiction is maladaptive. Okay, it is something that I do in order to either feel the absence of something, let's say pain or conflict, okay, or to zoom myself into a better place, to experience pleasure. And there's nothing wrong with avoiding pain and seeking pleasure, yeah, when comes from a balanced state. But there's a problem when that occurs without us being able to control it. Yeah, when it happens in that what you call ruminating manner, looping, yeah, when we get stuck in thoughts. Anxiety is a mental problem. Okay, yeah, we play the same record over and over and over again. Or when we get stuck in emotions, we can even get stuck in physical states. So that is something that can clearly indicate to us that we are, well, yeah, in a lower level of perception. Because if we are dominated by our thoughts, by our emotions, or by our body, and do not feel that we have a choice, that means that we are not seeing truth. Because one of the coolest things about truth is that it always not only comes in clarity, but that it always also comes with a choice. Have you guys ever noticed that? Why is that? I think, Julian, you just mentioned that. Because when you are in truth, or any other, there's higher states than truth, when we become able to see not just what is, but we can also see what our lower states can see. So it's inclusive. Yeah. So let's say you in truth, you feel empowered, you feel ready to let go of something that was hindering or impeding you, find the courage to speak up, you find the courage to change, you find the courage to quit your job or, move into a new house or whatever. And of course, you're still going through fears of change and fears of what they're going to say and all that. But you have enough energy, you have enough power to follow through on that. And as you do, you don't feel any conflict because you are fully aligned to it. This is what you see, you have the choice, this is what you do, you put it into action, and that creates another feeling in us. It's almost like an elation that we experience. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, it's so beautiful. The way you just described it, it's like there's a freedom in it. And the other way I was just feeling into was if we don't take those steps and get into this state, the other thing we do is coping. We're bypassing, and so then we don't get that freedom. We don't get that feeling because we're still stuck in a lower state. If you know what, if it's
100%. 100%.
there's this fake positivity that's been going on lately that I've just been, listening to. It's like bypassing, and it's fake positivity because it's like, oh, I don't want to worry about that, or oh, that's happening, oh, I'll just be, fake positivity. And it's not the same as what you've just expressed now. It's that's a bypassing part where we're still in the ego state and
Yeah,
still
I'm
in
not
mental.
talking about that choice. Do not
No, no,
participate.
no, that's right. Yeah, but it just came to mind.
Not wanting
Going.
to participate in reality
Mm.
does not mean that
I
you're in
know.
truth. It means that you opted out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm.
And this is really important also later when we discuss the qualities of darkness. Okay. Because not acknowledging that there is darkness does not prevent us from being affected by it. Okay. Opting out of or not wanting to participate in what it is, okay, does not protect us from the effects of it. Especially if you're energetically sensitive. because your spiritual organs are already set to develop with or without you, and you already feel the overall conflict, not just your own, but also the conflict that is in the whole of humanity. But if we just go back to the descriptors here and the feelings, the reference feelings that we can all experience, you said something very important here. Look, you said something about this positive message to ourselves. Okay, yeah, feels like freedom. Truth feels like freedom. It does. Because without freedom, there cannot be truth. The freedom to choose, the freedom to think, the freedom to feel, and the freedom to act has to first be established before you can act and live in truth. So there's a higher level of seeing truth is one thing. That's where it all starts. Seeing truth and discerning truth does not guarantee that we are making choices based on truth. Anybody know what I'm talking about here? There's many of you guys who can see truth. But then something happens. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's say you belong to these maybe 10-15% of people in this world that can see truth. See, feel, not referring to visual ability. Okay, you just know it. Somebody said this earlier, I think, Linda, that was you. You just know it. And yet, though, you're not fully acting on it. What's going on inside of us here? Let's investigate this. Let's go into this place in us, that excruciating pain place, where we all experience our conflictions. Let's go there. You're somebody who can already feel truth, you know truth. But you don't act on it or according to it. What's the problem? Where along the way that does what happen? You all believe in truth, right? You wouldn't be here if you didn't. You all believe in truth, right?
There is a part, Jona, in me, and I've recognised it, where I feel I wish things were a certain way, or I feel like, oh, well, I've done something wrong, or if I could have, would have, should have done it this way, then maybe this wouldn't be happening. So that's again when I have been stuck in wanting to have things a certain way, and the faltering then is like, you can feel truth, you can feel that, oh, this is really an opportunity to move into truth. However, the other part of me that is still stuck in different perceptions pulls me back, and I have gone back into like, well, if I just try harder, if I do this, if I smile a lot, maybe things will work out the way that my ego mind believes that things should be. So that to me is a faltering, or there could be an experience of where I feel something's up, something doesn't feel right, but I'll still go anyway, which is okay because you're having an experience participating in that and a lesson. But it can be like trying to fit in, like not feeling safe, and that's when I have to also make a really concerted effort to come back into my heart, come back into, create a space and feel my own stance of my own inner truth and actually be able to feel it. And if I'm a bit confused and I don't really know at that moment, I realize I'm a bit skewed. So it's like, take a break, take a time out, and be okay with it, just but not jump into anything or act. I think that's the hardest thing, is actually instantly wanting to act out or say something and be able to pull myself back and feel, wait a minute, is this really true to me? Do I know what I'm feeling right now?
Okay, so you see me, I'm typing here, trying to catch as much as possible from what you guys are sharing. Okay, so we have two different categories of sharing here. One is describing the problem, and the other one is, ways to perhaps overcome it. Conflicted inner feeling. This is how we can identify our ego perception. I'm just writing this down as you guys go, because those are all very valuable descriptors. Stuck in an emotion or thought. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, there's also a recognition, like when you have that deja vu feeling of being in the past again. Oh, this has happened to me
Mm-hmm.
before. That familiarity, and go, oh wait, because it's right in that moment that
Mm-hmm.
I can become consciously aware of stopping, taking a breath, and actually feeling it and feeling it through, and actually again just observe that feeling and what could be possibly going on, but then also just drop that as well, and then really drop deeper and feel what I am really, what message my inner feelings are.
What message, also what you truly want, and
Yeah,
why, like
and it'll
what
feel
it
good.
actually is that you want to
Yeah.
express.
And it'll feel like freedom. It'll feel like, oh, I'm not doing that,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a feeling of freedom that comes with that as well. That you're just like, oh, just go for it. just be with my heart, with my what's really feeling, and it doesn't matter. There's no judgment in it, and there's no in that state. It doesn't seem, there's no opinion that comes forward. There's no nothing pushing up against.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a discovery of like, well, I'm just going to go with this feeling.
Mm-hmm. So ego perception, which is the limited, um, limited perception. Okay, described as a conflicted inner feeling, stuck in an emotional thought. Let's separate this, because you guys are very aware already. Ruminating, or repetitive, disempowering, or controlling thoughts. Physical contraction or reaction, wishful thinking, idealization, conformism, externalization of self. This is trying to fit in. You called this trying to fit in. Inner criticism, judgment, unconscious beliefs. Yeah, it has to be in a certain way. Yeah, or external um, values. Getting pulled into the past. I've added assumptions and conclusions that we can get to, like, oh, this got to be wrong, or there's got to be something wrong with me, or I don't deserve this, or I should be better. Those are all just assumptions, okay? And while they show me as a trained coach that underneath those kind of assumptions, you know, a wishful thinking or an idealization resides, it is normal for us to experience, these automatic, yeah, um, it's automatic conflicts. Okay, so there's something in our subconscious, usually conditioning. Yeah, so yeah, let me call this conditioning. Yeah, where you have been conditioned to think in a certain way or to act in a certain way, which is outside of your control. Yeah, this happened at a very early stage in your life, where you were most imprintable and impressionable, and where you did not know that you have a choice. Yeah. So, for example, Julianne, when you just said, um, sometimes it's really just about catching that, when there's sort of an automatic reaction in you, an automatic thought, an automatic judgment, an automatic, should be better, or I should have done this or whatever. Okay, these are automatic things that happen in us. We cannot control them, and yet we know that, with a properly trained mind and also spiritual work, that we can heal that. We can not only master that, but we can even reverse it. Okay, this is very important. This is, these messages of hope that we've been exchanging here today are extremely important. It's information that most of you don't have. Okay, and us describing what it feels like when you're in truth and what it feels like when you're dealing with untruths is extremely important. It seems so simple, it seems so basic, and yet most of us falter right there. Yeah, because we cannot realize how unfree our choices are, how entrapped we actually are. When we are unfree, when your choices, your thoughts, and your emotions, and even your body do not express freedom, okay, you cannot discern truth. You're not in truth. You are under the influence of something that pulls you into a contracted, a smaller, we described it earlier, part of you. Yeah, let me call this ego. Okay, the ego isn't bad. You all know that. The ego is necessary, and we should thank it. All right, that it has been, able to get us this far. Okay, but if you want to enter true self-healing and spiritual initiation, you're going to have to discover and admit the limitations of the ego and really accept that as the one of the pillars of your new perception. You have to admit to yourself that your ego perception is limited and that you are not in control of it. And there's nothing wrong with this. Why is there nothing wrong with it? Because we can experience this every day.
Yeah. It can pull us so quickly. Like
Yeah.
myself, I can get pulled
Yeah.
so quickly down the rabbit hole, and it's like, okay. But then eventually there's like in a moment where, okay, I get it. And sometimes that can be a bit dangerous, especially in my past, where there's like an enmeshment that happens if we keep allowing it and don't sort of wake up and become conscious that that's what's going on. All of a sudden, I could find myself deep down the rabbit hole, and it sort of takes a bit of a while. It's like walking through molasses, right, to sort of get out of that and that enmeshment with whatever choice very limited choice I just made. But the growth is in that too, because actually I don't know, pulling yourself out of it and becoming aware of it, it's like, oh my God, that moment.
It's one of
But
the most beautiful feelings, isn't it?
yeah,
The
it is.
feeling that you experience in
Mm,
yourself when you have an insight,
mm.
when you have a deep insight, when you have this like sort of light bulb going on. Okay.
And that
It
helps
feels like
us
a
stop
fire is
judging.
turning on inside of you. Okay. It's so elating.
Mm.
It's so
And that
liberating.
wipes out the judgment, right? When you have that experience, because then you can't judge yourself. You're like, oh,
You are inspirited in that moment. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Um, the only problem with that is that of course the ego likes that because that is as opposing to the most excruciating pain that we can experience through our own dualism and duality. Um, that is actually experienced as one of the most beautiful, most blissful experiences. There is nothing more powerful than a new insight. Nothing. Because it can change everything in your life. So it's not just, in a bad way. Yeah. It can also affect you in a good way when you have your own insight, when you got to understanding yourself and the world that you live in a little better. Remember how we talked about this impulse seeking truth? The impulse to seek truth is just something that is there. And I use that as a proof, I called it, that we are actually destined for better things. We already have that technology in us. We just haven't learned to train that properly yet. Okay. But this impulse to seek truth, guys, is coming with the elation feeling when you find it. And there's a bunch of quotes out there from me about truth, and one of them is truth feels like love. You'll recognize truth by the way it feels in your heart. And there's some other quotes such as truth sets you free. Yeah, you guys all know these kind of wisdoms, okay, that have been around for thousands of years. Why do you think that is? Because it is the higher state of your humanness, your human being. Yeah, that is your higher self state. Your higher self state is able to perceive truth. And that's why we're seeking truth. Not everybody is, by the way. Don't assume that everybody wants to have truth. There's a large majority right now out there that's not actually interested in truth. Now, just real brief here. What do you think that is? What could make a person not be interested in finding truth?
People being identified with their ego and their own attachments to what they want, what their ego wants.
Mm-hmm. Okay, they're attached to the way things are right now, right? And they rather have it the way it is, because that's what you just said.
And the control, the
Whatever,
controlling
whatever it
what
does
they
for them, right? Whatever
why.
it does,
Yeah.
they're okay with it. They want it,
Yeah.
or at least so they think they do. If I just get another car or a bigger house, then everything's going to be different. If I just have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a kid or a job, blah, blah, then everything's going to be different. Is that so? Well, you guys have been around for a while. Is that so?
Yeah, and I've lived most of my life like that, and no, it's not so.
It takes a while. It takes living a life to get to that place, Jared. So
Yeah,
congratulations. Okay, you've made it over the hump. All
thank
right.
God it's Thursday.
So when we, yeah, because when we look at people on Monday, no, when we look at 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds even, and no disrespect here, but there is, I've talked about this many times, there is a sort of something that comes with time, yeah, a level of maturity that comes with time, with life experiences. It seems as if we have to go through these life experiences to get to higher levels of insight. And that's what we call organic. That's what we call, I think I called it normal, spiritual development in part one. No, it's organic. Yeah, so at some point in our life, we start asking, deeper questions. We start asking, is this even true? Do I really want this? Is this even who I am? Hey, when you're 20 and your parents or your country pays for your college or for whatever, you don't have to deal with paying bills yet and stuff like that, but you feel like a full adult and you're invincible and immortal. Okay, you don't ask these kind of questions. When are you starting to ask these kind of questions? Who am I? Is this really true to me? Do I really want this? Is this really who I want to be in this world? Is what I'm expressing really true? Or am I lying to myself and others? When does a person start asking these kind of questions? What do you think? What do you remember?
The emptiness that nothing external, nothing is satisfying, or if it is, it's only momentary when you get it, but then you're empty again. Like, it's that
Okay,
emptiness.
emptiness. Okay. Actually, we could also add that to this one here. There's something way more obvious.
That feeling of connection and love with others and the joy that we can experience with others, that is fulfilling.
Well, let's say you're 20 and you land a job as a pharmaceutical rep and you make 140 grand a year and you have this like super chic, loft studio in downtown and you have tons of money and drive a cool car. I don't know.
I don't think you start asking those questions until half your life's over and you're at the
Yeah.
halfway point. You're on your way down
Mm.
now. You're on your way back.
The halfway point is, I mean, I agree with that, but it's not always like that. It's not like it typically does kick in at the halfway point, but it can also kick in earlier with people. And I know
Yeah,
for a
definitely.
fact that most of you here, it has kicked in earlier.
Yes, definitely. But for most people, it's around that 40 mark, 42, 40,
For
early
unconscious
40s.
people, it is.
Yeah.
Because up until then, they were unconscious of truth. Okay. But there was a huge catalyst for beginning to ask these kind of questions. We talked about it many times.
When the inner world and outer world doesn't match up, the contradiction.
Okay, and what did we call that earlier? When you feel that inner contradiction,
Yeah.
excruciating pain.
Yep.
Wherever that whatever the nature of the contradiction, is when we experience pain. So there you have it. The gift from the gods. You get to experience pain in order to train your spiritual senses and organs, in order to what? Discover truth and learn how to choose it, how to live it. Have you ever had a thought like that? Are you thinking like that about your pain? The pain that you experienced this morning or yesterday or last week or whatever? In those moments when you're experiencing pain, are you able to have those kind of insights? Probably not. You're probably not perceiving your pain as a gift from the gods or the God or higher power, right? Is there anybody here who says, thank you, God, for sending me this pain so I can ask the deeper questions and gain a higher level of understanding of reality and find truth?
Sometimes I trick myself into saying something funny like, okay, so there's a golden nugget in here somewhere. I may not be able to see it right
Mm-hmm.
now,
Mm-hmm.
but um,
Yeah.
just trying to hold on to the awareness is sometimes helpful.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
always.
No, but you're nailing it though. Okay. You are reminding yourself that there might be a different perspective.
Yes.
One that you probably can't see right now, which is fine, because you've already identified that you're in a lower state anyway, most likely, hopefully. Okay. But you know that there is a higher perspective there. You know that there is a higher reality there, even if you can't see it right now.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That's what training our spiritual organs means. That's what training our mind means. And we're already at the 1.5 hour mark. I don't want to go that long today. But I want you to have a very conscious experience of this connection. That the ability to know that there is truth, the ability to remember that, even though you are under the influence of untruth, or your inner darkness, or your ego, whatever you want to call it. That is a higher ability. So all of us with trauma and, childhood, this and that and whatnot, even karmic stuff, we should be grateful. Because that's something that we've acquired, that's a higher ability that we've acquired in a previous life, in a previous incarnation. Namely, remembering that there is another truth out there. Why else would you be here? You are seeking for a higher truth for good reason. Because you had a question what was portrayed to you, what your ego perceived as truth. Congratulations. Now, we already know that you all have a spiritual impulse because we are not just, doing a training course in Socrates here, yeah, and logical thinking. We are doing a training course here that brings our mind and our inner feeling and our spirit together. All right, so this is an even higher level than just this higher ability of experiencing our own insights. It's where we bring our feeling in. And this is where most people falter. Many of you have already trained your intellectual mind in, the presence of something immaterial, something spiritual being part of the reality. So you already know that, you can feel that. You've intellectually explained it to yourself, more or less. It's still hard to articulate it, but you know it's there. Okay? There you know that you're soul with a body. You just know it. Okay? So there's a sort of a spirit of truth already working with you. Okay? By giving you this higher ability, namely to feel truth. Now we're up against the one last thing. What is that? What is it that is holding us back from choosing truth, acting and living in truth? Don't say ego now. The ego's always there. That's your lower self. That is how you come into this world. Okay, you got that for free, remember? It's not the cause. The ego is not the cause of anything. The ego is the manager, the coping manager of having to deal with an untrue reality. So it doesn't cause reality to be untrue. It just perceives it in a limited way and therefore perpetuates it. Why is it so hard for you to remember there is a higher truth? And the answer to that question will be the answer to, what can I do to train my mind, to train my spiritual senses and organs?
It's like taking a leap into trust. So it's that feeling of like not knowing what's coming forward, but trusting that the heart knows. That as soon as I trust and go with my heart, the feeling that what arises next is what is, a higher state and a higher experience than what I've experienced before from the lower states, and where we keep creating the same old, and lesson after lesson. We can actually break free from it.
We can break free from it when we remember who we truly are.
Yeah, I think
So,
there's an element, Yona, of the fear of the unknown when you're breaking into that,
yeah, yeah,
because
definitely.
you're so used to the way that you've lived your life, the conditioned way, and coming from those
Mm-hmm.
ego responses and stepping into that, like Julianne was just saying, with that element of trust. It's a challenge.
Definitely, it's definitely challenging for our ego. It's one of the most challenging things of all is change. The ego hates change. Why change? It disrupts the comfort zone, right? Ugh. Then we have to do something. We have to deal with something. Can't really avoid things anymore. We have to kind of step into action. That's why the ego does not like change. And there's a reason why we have fear of the unknown. It's also programmed into us, obviously, because, there's an element of who we truly are that is very dark. Do you guys know what that is? What's the element of our being here in 3D that is very dark to us? That everybody tries to avoid thinking about and feeling into. Everybody. It's the most obvious thing.
You just mean your shadow, right?
No.
Talking about the
What
fear of
is
death.
Yes. Yeah. Who in the world, in the universe, okay, creates a being that is conscious of its own expiration date? Or not maybe the exact date, but the fact that it will expire one day. It is able to experience its own life, its own existence, and has to experience its own death. That's the core of all duality. So the fear of the unknown, Jared, is the mothership of all distortions of perception. Okay. It's underneath everything. You can break everything. All of these things, conflicted in the feelings, stuck in emotions, getting pulled in the past, conforming to externalizing yourself, blah, 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 all of this getting, making unfree choices and so forth. You can break all that down to the fear of death. The fear of the unknown is just basically the placeholder for that, because that is the big unknown. I call it the dark aspect because it is dark. There's no light there. There's no clarity there. Do you know what's going to happen to you when you die? Do you know how you're going to die? Do you know what it's going to feel like when you go through the dying process? No. Will you ever know? Yes. When?
When you're in it.
Correct. But we don't want to be in it, right?
Right.
We don't want to die.
Right.
So we want to know what it's like, but we don't want to experience it.
Hmm.
That's why we avoid it. Now, clearly, obviously, we have programs and conditioning and instincts and drives and stuff like that that also prevent us from prematurely dying. Okay, and clearly, there's also biological tasks and predispositions that we have to go through, in order to somehow give meaning to us living, right? I mean, when you're 5, you can't think of anything else, than becoming 10 years old because you think it's so cool to be 2-digit, have a 2-digit birthday. And when you're 11, you can't think of anything else but turning 15 and you can start driving. And when you're 15, you can't think of anything else but being 21 because that's when you can start drinking alcohol, at least here in the United States, 18 in most of your countries. Okay, and when you're 18 or 21, you can't think of anything else but, one day having this sort of big shot job and making lots of money and maybe, meeting someone, significant other and, build a family or not, but, something like that. These are sort of these mini goals that we have that are programmed into us, okay, that give life, at least on the surface, fulfilling a certain program and with that giving it a low level meaning. But we all know that that's not enough. You already talked about this, the emptiness, the judgment, the, oh, I should have, oh, I could have done so much more, blah, blah, blah. All the stuff that could have been. All right, that comes from a different place from you. But to truly, live that and actually discover and explore your higher potential, you're going to have to face all these kind of questions that I'm asking you here. You're going to have to answer things such as what happens when I die, not the mechanics of it, but what is ending? And what is continuing? Is there an afterlife? Is there maybe even resurrection in a way, like a reincarnation? Yeah, do I come back? Do I get to choose whom I want to come back as? What's the whole purpose of coming back? What's the goal of living 100 or 100,000 lifetimes? All right, what comes after that? Those are all questions that have to do with higher perception. You will not experience relief from these things that we've worked out here as the main contributors or influencers of distorted perception if you are not willing to face these kind of questions, not even mentioning, things like shadow, like you just mentioned, purpose of trauma, purpose of pain and suffering, and all those kind of things that are all tied to truth. You cannot get to truth if you avoid those kind of questions, because they are part of truth. Birth and decay are both part of truth. They're absolute in this universe. So what I'm saying with that is that, these ways to shift and disrupt ego perception, and there's many of these, there's many techniques and many routines and disciplines and so forth that we talk about, or that we have talked about a million times: mindfulness, prayer, meditation, chanting, singing, dancing, engaging, and all that is good and true and beautiful. Yeah, those are all techniques, quote unquote, yeah, including breath work, including grounding, centering, clearing, and so forth. It's obvious. But none of that will grip if you don't take the time to do it. Yeah? Create the space and the time to observe your state. Refrain from unconscious reactions and actions, which, as we figured out in the very beginning of this workshop, can only really happen in a space of calm. We cannot disrupt or shift our ego perception without understanding and remembering that there is a higher truth, which means we have to admit to ourselves that whatever it is that we're perceiving right now is limited. It just is, no matter what your ego mind tells you. And last but not least, without remembering who you truly are. And why is that so powerful, to remember who you truly are? Why is that so powerful, guys? What happens when you remember who you truly are? Let's discuss these two questions. They belong together. Who are you truly? And why is it so powerful to remember that?
Then we can see when we're caught, when we're stuck in our limited perception. Because
Right, but who are you? You first have to answer that. Who are you truly? I mean,
I'm a spirit.
understanding who you truly are and then remembering it. Two things. First, you got to know or feel or explore who you truly are. Who are you truly, Julianne?
When you connect with that, your ego immediately drops and you are in that higher consciousness state.
Okay, but don't dance around it. What comes up when you ask yourself that question?
Who am I truly?
Yeah,
I'm a true self.
that's just
I'm
a
a
word.
higher consciousness. I'm a soul with a body having a human experience.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Cindy. This makes you a good student. Okay. You repeat what your teacher, in this case me, has hammered into you over years. Okay. Over and over and over and over again. Okay, good. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why we have to repeat things over and over and over again, even if they don't make sense for us in the beginning, because you can pull it up when the question arises. That's why. At first, it may just be an answer to what appears like a test question, but it wasn't. I know you mean it. Okay, so I'm joking a little bit, not because I'm making fun of you or anything. You know that, right, Cindy? I'm joking because I know that you know that.
I
Yeah,
think
and I did actually have to learn that over and over and over again until that neural pathway stuck and it overtook all of the other thoughts of who I am. I know who I
Exactly.
am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just got to remember it.
Yes.
You already know it. Okay. You just got to remember it. What changes when you remember it? What changes when you remember that you're in actuality, you say a soul with a body. So the slightly expanded definition of that would be that you're a spiritual being. Okay, spiritual as in like there's something about you that is unseen, that is can be perceived through consciousness. That's what the definition of a spiritual being is. That is having a physical experience. So you're experiencing your own physical life as this spiritual being.
Yes.
And with that experience comes a little attachment that we call ego. And that part says, no, 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 no. You were just this body. And when this body ends, when this life ends, you end. Right?
Yep.
All there is the physical life. All there is the material stuff, the material security, the material well being, the comfort, the pleasure, and all that. That's all there is. There's nothing else there. That's what the ego says. And that's what ego perception reflects back to you. So the most effective way to shift out of or to disrupt your ego perception is to remind yourself that that's not true. It's a lie. It's not a lie as in like, you know, somebody doing this to you or on purpose. No, this is the ego's job. The ego's job is to manage, you know, the physical life. But it's a very low level of that. It's sort of God's insurance policy that if you don't develop any consciousness in this lifetime, at least you're going to live a life and you have some experiences that can somehow be metabolized so that they can serve you as a database of experiences for your future lives. If we didn't have an ego and we'd be born into this life with full awareness of all our spiritual senses, with full consciousness of who we truly are, how long do you think we'd survive? We already talked about this in different ways, but it was the same thing. If you already knew that you were, a spirit being that is just having this like cruise trip here in this physical body, and you don't like your body and you don't like the life that you're in, and you think it's all bullshit and it's just painful and struggle, what would you do?
You just kill yourself.
I
Yeah,
would leave. I would leave the room.
absolutely. Absolutely. And there is a lot of souls that actually do that.
Yeah.
They come in, peek in, and then they're like, that's not for me. Not yet. Or I don't want this. Yeah. They die at birth or, 2 years old or whatever, depending on their karma. But again, we've already established that the karma is something that our higher self decides. And that's a consequence of a previous life. So we decide to come back in order to do better or in order to collect new experiences, new wisdom. Okay, so if a child dies at the age of 2, say, which is a very painful experience here from a physical point of view, then that the soul of that child's purpose was to be here for these 2 years and provide something maybe to the parents or to the environment or whatever. So it had agreed to that, okay, and nothing more. It was just a 2-year cruise. I don't want to go deeper into this, but I want you to understand that, when you shift out of your ego's perception, you begin to see a bigger picture. And that does not just entail the understanding of yourself and all your lifetimes and your own spiritual development throughout all these lifetimes. It entails much more than that. It entails the cosmic order of things and aspects of spiritual evolution. Where does this all lead to? What if I've lived in enough lives to collect all the data, all the experiences, all the wisdom that I need? What happens then? And is there a way to maybe accelerate that, to jump off the wheel of samsara a little faster, not having to do that many lifetimes? Well, wouldn't you want to know what happens when you're done with this human experience that you're experiencing? That's what spiritual truth reveals to you, that there's so much more. And this, I've shared this on many occasions here with the members of the Sacred Self-Healing community. There's a running joke here in our house, and that is, there's always another level. In other words, whatever level of perception I think I have, there always is another one. There always is a bigger one. There always is a lot more to the universe that I cannot see. And that's a level of when you reach that point where you actually fully feel this and you're in full concordance with it, you have no conflict with that whatsoever. And when you reach a certain level of humbleness and you recognize that you're just at the beginning of a much bigger journey here as a human being. Maybe, yeah, you've had enough of this physical experience. Not enough as in enough is enough, but enough as in maybe then it's time for you to move on. And that is then something that allows you to overcome your fear of death, your fear of the unknown. And this is the reason why the striving for higher perception is ultimately the striving for freedom. The freedom from all these things. because these all come with your physical experience. But you are actually a spirit being, a conscious spirit being, a being that is of consciousness, that is capable of overcoming all that. And there's, like esoteric wisdom and occult knowledge that humanity has been gathering for thousands of years. Yeah, that is not being revealed to everybody simply because it's too easy to just take off with it, profane it, or to misuse it. It is the journey that we all have to make on our own, out of our own desire to wanting truth. Yeah? The seeking of wisdom is something that needs to come from within ourselves through this fire that burns in our heart, wanting to experience the elation of insight. And insight, we didn't get to this today, but once more, I want to recommend the workshops that we've already done on mastering our thinking, all right, where I lay this out in detail, yeah, what is entailed and why we need to strive for mastering our thinking, because it is our thinking at the moment that is entrapping us, that is tying us to the physical experience of ourselves. It is our thinking. Because underneath every emotion that you have, which is first and foremost a physiological process, underneath all emotions, every emotion that you have is a thought, is a conception of something. And until you become first aware of the fact that 80% of your thoughts aren't even your own thoughts, you are being thought, but you're not actually thinking yourself. You know, you're regurgitating spoon-fed thoughts, repeating things that you've been conditioned with. You're hearing tape recordings in the back of your head. Yeah, those make up 80% of your thoughts. And that 90% of your thinking is actually repetitive. It's the same thinking process over and over and over again. 90% of your thinking is repetitive and automatic. Okay, unless you come to that conclusion and you explore how you can start thinking your own thoughts and having your own insights, and then becoming able to choose that freely, to choose freely what you're thinking. Am I really wanting to think this right now? Is this a thought that I consciously thought? Or is that a thought that is the result of an automatic thinking process that I have never even subscribed to? Until you can answer that, you will not be able to overcome the fear of truth and with it the attachments to the physical life. And that requires you to investigate aspects of death and afterlife and darkness. And with it also the the topics that we are discussing in the etherization electrification, namely the bigger components here of the overall evolution of consciousness of humanity. So be aware that what keeps you here is not your mean, evil ego. Your ego doesn't cause any of this. Your ego just executes it. But it is your consciousness, your higher ability that allows you to overcome it. It's the most beautiful thing. When you realize that you already have the technology, or, say the faculties that are required for you to liberate yourself from all this in you. And that you even have the freedom to choose it. You just need to learn how to train it. And that requires you to train your thinking first. And once you can master your thinking, and you know me, I'm always like 80-20, right? So you're not going to most likely get better than 80% thinking for yourself, and 20 will stay in your unconscious. Okay, but that's a pretty good ratio. Right now it's the opposite ratio. It's 20-80. If you're lucky. If you're lucky, 20% of your thoughts are your own. The other 80 are somehow externalized or conditioned or programmed. So once you can master your thoughts, which requires you to master your thinking, then you can move on to mastering your emotions. And when you start working on mastering your emotions, you're going to have to work on mastering your body, your physical, simultaneously, because there's no way you can master your emotions without exploring, understanding, and learning what's the best for your body. Because if you're wearing a hat, hungry and tired, HAT, okay, you are 100% tied to your physical, and with it your ego perception. No exceptions here, myself included. When you're tired, when you're hungry, and some of the other physiological states. And therefore you can't control your emotions. Because your emotions are based on physiological processes which have a thought, a belief, or a conception underneath them. So first you need to become aware of your thoughts. And that includes the way you think. The way you think and your thoughts are two different things. The way you're thinking is the process. Your thoughts are the result. Those thoughts cause your emotions. And your emotions cause your body to react, or your body causes you to have these kind of emotions. And in the same manner can the body cause you to have certain thoughts, namely all those automatic thoughts, those 80%. That's why when you face the dark night of the soul, why you get so low. It's not because you're under attack or something like that. It's because you cannot control, you cannot master your thoughts and your emotions yet, because you ride yourself deeper into these lower states to the point where you believe 100% that you are powerless. And that said, of course, there are dark forces, and they do induce those kind of beliefs and programmed thought processes, okay? But you're not going to be able to understand darkness until you get a firm grip on your own darkness. Okay, so that's why you guys struggle with your ego so much. And that's why we spend quite a bit of time, lifetimes really, with dealing with our ego, until we come to a place where we have it fully internalized that that's just the physical program that is running here. It's not a simulation. No, it's real. But just because it's real doesn't mean it's true. All right, so you see that there's so much to perception, which is why it's so difficult to teach that, because we have to deal with everything that we think, that we emote, that we feel, that we sense. That's why I chose to teach this in exactly this order. I start with sensing, and then I move on to feeling, and then I move on to thinking and perceiving, and then I move on to training your spiritual organs by creating chakra awareness, by creating energy alignments and meditations that allow you to nurture, to execute these spiritual senses and organs that you have gradually, so that you begin to experience a new world of sensations, feelings, and perceptions. And once you have these new, quote unquote, new, they're not really new, they're just clearer, they're less distorted perceptions, then new questions arise in you. And when these new questions arise in you, as we call the spiritual inquiry, that's when the desire to find truth begins to grow in you. That's when you begin to feel that you have a choice. And that's then the beginning of you actually realizing that that's something that can be trained. It's something that you can do. You just have to do it more. Not harder, just more. You got to just remind yourself more frequently of who you are. Remind yourself that your ego perception is errorless. Remind yourself to not act out on unconscious thoughts and emotions. And to remind yourself that you need more space, more time, more calm to even feel all of this. So that's, in a nutshell, the process of spiritual initiation. And it requires a very proper training of your mind, your emotions, your body, and your spiritual feeling. It is not something that can be obtained over the weekend. It takes lifetimes. And if any of the things that I'm sharing with you here, that I'm conveying here, just makes a little bit of sense to you, if you can just feel that inside of you somehow, that means that you have already aligned yourself to truth. Because when someone speaks truth, you can feel it. That's a spiritual organ in you. That is basically a support that you get from a higher spiritual reality answering your call for wanting to see truth or understand truth and feel it. In esoteric Christianity, we look at it as, basically angel beings rushing, to help you feel it. And as you're engaging with that feeling that I described as elation earlier, you have this miraculous feeling of suddenly everything becomes so much more clearer. Suddenly things make sense. Suddenly there's no conflict. Suddenly you feel free. That's how you nurture your spiritual organs. That's how they grow. And with them growing, you're learning to overcome your own duality. You're learning to overcome your ego perception and your attachments. Because that's what all these things are. To the physical reality. Any closing words or questions or comments before I let you go? All right, then I want to thank you all for coming here, for sharing, especially, and for watching if you watch this on YouTube. And invite you to ask questions. Yeah, don't just take things that I say as, given. Question them. Seek truth. Do this actively and consciously. And then next time, in part 3, which will be probably 3 or 4 weeks from now, we will discuss how this really works within us with, what was there first, the thought or the emotion, what happens in our body. Let's dive deep into the mechanics of perception and the promised 12 senses that are part of your physical experiences, but that we have not properly trained yet, other than the 5 senses that we all perceive as sort of the pillars of our physical experience. But there's more to that. Let's do that in part 3. So thank you guys very much. And here a little perk. I wanted to give a very, very brief update to this full moon that we're currently experiencing here in the end of May. If you look at the energy calendar, you see a very unusual pattern there. You see a green and a dark red. So highly conflicted state right next to a green and elated, calm, unconflicted state. This is a very interesting week right now. Yeah, this time here in May has a big significance for all of us, for the next 20 years at least, as it unveils, and makes it aware to us how our duality feels within ourselves. We have to experience our own duality. So if you are experiencing something like really, really cool new things that elate you, things that motivate you, that bring optimism to you, and at the same time also excruciating pain, confliction, sadness, or grieving, and you experience both at the same time, I want you to remember this. I want you to consciously execute your higher faculties and take the time, take the space to observe your own state. Admit it to yourself, to say, okay, I'm feeling this and I'm feeling this at the same time. Understand that this is not showing you that you have a mental illness or whatever. It is a tool for you to recognize that you have a choice. We are at the precipice of the Spirit of Truth fully revealing itself to us in form of our own consciousness, in form of our own spirit being, our higher self. And I know what this sounds like, but it comes with us being willing. Being willing, we don't have to be perfect at it, but being willing to overcome the fear of death, the fear of the unknown. It is the wind of change. The wind of change is coming to us now. It allows us to experience our own duality, and with it, the biggest power we have, namely the power of choice. And we get to experience that in the presence of untruth, in the presence of darkness. So this is the good news here for this time that you're finding yourselves in. There's something you need to let go of, something that you need to allow to conclude in love. There's nobody out there trying to get to you or doing anything to you other than what you are already doing to yourself. And once you realize that, the letting go then becomes rather a process of refraining from doing something or thinking something rather than attaining something. You don't need anything to let go. All you got to do is stop judging and criticizing and instead find the good, the true, and the beautiful things in this world and hold them in your heart and in your mind as you are traversing this truly crazy reality right now. All right? Yeah, so let me repeat that. Focus on the good, the true, and the beautiful, and watch your thoughts. Refrain from criticizing. Refrain from judging, because in that moment, as you are criticizing yourself or others, or reality for that matter, or the powers that be, or whatever is out there that you deem to be in conflict or in controversy with, you are robbing yourself of the power to attain these higher faculties of consciousness, the ability to discern truth. Why? Because you're energizing, you're empowering your ego in this moment. So this is just a little mini brief energy update here for all of you going through this weird time. Yeah, and since we're sharing our sensations, our feelings, our thoughts, and our perceptions, I just wanted to send you this message that there's nothing wrong with you. On the contrary, if you can experience these two realities, your spiritual and your physical reality, back to back within yourself, if you're facing your own duality, know that that is a sign of you spiritually growing and an empowerment to freely choose. To freely choose the reality that you want to live in and to freely choose whom you want to live this life as. That's it, guys. Stay conscious. I love you, and I see you very soon.